Welcome to Mindful Minutes with Musicians, the show where we aspire to inspire musicians and artists talking about mindfulness and what brings us through our practice to achieve greater goals.
Hey everyone, huge thank you for everyone to tune in today to watch this episode of Mindful Minutes with Musicians. And to make sure not to miss an episode, please subscribe, click on the bell, and leave all your comments below the video. Today's guest is Arthur Tutt, a digital marketing consultant who started as a professional engineer working in both UK and Canada. Taking some time away from that, he visited Eastern Europe, Australia, and New Zealand, and took some time to experience 5 different 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreats. Did I say that right?
That's it.
The day before coming back, he actually, the day before coming back to Canada, he actually had everything stolen from him and was left with just like the items that he had on him and his passport and everything, and took that 15-hour flight home. And so all these experiences, needless to say, have helped him quietly build an international agency with clients around the world, helping clients with marketing. And he started his own brand blog, www.arthurtutt.com, which you should definitely check out. And he shares his experiences and knowledge about marketing and help businesses navigate this messy world of marketing. And he's here with us today to share his own thoughts and his practices on mindfulness. So a huge welcome to Arthur Tutt.
Oh, I gotta say, thank you, David. I mean, as you were reading out that intro, there was a part of me that was like, wait, who's he talking about? Who's this exciting, interesting character? That's not me. Like, who is this person? I gotta meet him.
That's right. There's a lot of like a lot of worldliness there. You know what I mean? You've been to a few places, so it's like, I think that, you know.
Well, it's funny, just as a quick aside, because I think it's easy to, like, get in your own head, or we can have moments where it kind of get a little bit kind of gloomy, or like whatever, down a little bit. But take a moment and you like reflect on, what have I actually done in my life? And if I look back on like the last, 10, 15, 20 years, what are all the different things that you've done? And you start writing them down. You're like, I've actually done a lot of stuff in here, and I forgot about this and that and that, and like all these little pieces and adventures. You're like, okay, I guess I have done some interesting things in my life.
Yeah. Oh no, totally. It's funny. Google has the picture reminders like 3 years ago or 2 years
Oh yeah,
ago.
and Facebook too. Yeah.
And
Do
they
you
do
remember this?
Do you remember? But it's funny, sometimes you're like, I totally was doing this like amazing concert, or I was doing this like awesome show, or you know what I mean? Like,
do you ever have that moment where it's like, man, 3 years ago I was really cool. What happened?
Like, well, I'm sure times like, pandemics absolutely
change things up.
Ultimately change that. But
last thing I was going to say here before we get into it, I was going to say I feel very honored and privileged to be on here, a show about musicians. I don't necessarily consider myself a musician. However, let's see if I can do this without breaking everything.
All right.
Oh, hold on.
Yes.
I do have my saxophone.
Yes.
I haven't played it since high school, so I can pretend I'm a musician.
But there's music in there somewhere.
Sure. I'm sure somebody could make it sound decent.
Amazing. I guess
good to see you, man.
Good to see you. Good to see you. I guess we'll just kind of start things off. Like, how have you been? How are you doing?
That's a big and loaded question.
It's a nice one to start things off.
So things have been a journey recently. I mean, as you said, obviously the last, year and a half, there's been this whole, pandemic and everything. I feel like that's starting to kind of chill out and relax a little bit. A few weeks ago, I got my first vaccine dose. So like,
nice.
Looking to kind of come out the other side here. But I think the more interesting part here, and I think maybe more where your question was coming from, was, about 8 weeks ago, mid-May, I left the marketing agency that I was working for, which we had both mutually been working at for some time, which was where we met. And so for the last 6 weeks now, I've kind of been on my own, exploring what it's like to, be unemployed / be a self-employed business owner. And, figuring out how to manage my time and get on a schedule, and try not to freak out too much about money and just, trust that it's all going to work out in the end. So obviously there's no easy answer to your question. It is up and down, but, right now I'm feeling pretty positive.
Nice. Yeah. I noticed you did the 90-day challenge for yourself recently. I think these kind of things, structures are super helpful, and something we were kind of like chatting about that, like structure. But it's like challenging to stick to. What kind of like techniques and things do you keep yourself like motivated to like stick to these structures and stick to that kind of?
So this is actually a really important question, and I'm gonna unpack it in a few different ways here, because I think this is something that'd be very valuable to your audience, to your viewers. So just a little bit of context here. So what I did was a 90-day content challenge, which is basically just me saying, okay, for 90 days, right? So I started this at the beginning of April. For 90 days, every day, in my case, it was blog writing. Every day, I'm gonna write a blog, right? And so for 90 days, every day, whether I wanted to or not, I wrote a blog. And so at the end of it, I wrote 95 blogs. And actually, just a little backstory here, because I know you got in contact with me like about a month ago. You're like, hey, let's do the show. Yeah. And I was like, dude, let's wait. Give me a month. I want to finish this challenge, because I think talking about the results of this afterwards is going to be very valuable for people.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and totally. So there's a few pieces here, because I think what a lot of people struggle with, and I certainly have struggled with this too, is, you get a spark of inspiration where you're like, I'm going to start a YouTube channel, or I'm going to start a TikTok channel, or I'm going to start a blog, or, insert whatever the platform is, right? We get these, and, too, like as musicians, right? You get, an inspiration of like, all right, time to be the next big thing on TikTok, right? Let's do this. Like, let's get out, let's get found, let's get some awareness, SoundCloud, MySpace, whatever it might be.
Or right? Even those moments where you're like, I need to write a new album. I need to like put something together, or, that kind of.
Sure. Got to get the band back together. Got to make it happen.
Totally. Right.
But I think what often happens is you get that spark of inspiration and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And then for like 3 days, you're like super focused and dedicated, and you make those YouTube videos and you do the thing. And then after the first week, buddy throws a party, and then, another buddy's, needs help moving apartments across town. And then like somebody else is having a birthday, and then like life happens and things get distracted. And then all of a sudden you're just like not putting out content anymore.
Yeah.
And then a few weeks or months go by and you're like, oh, why didn't I get famous? Right. And what I was working through here was to say, okay, look, let's ignore the rest of the world as much as we can here. While not becoming a complete hermit, still maintain, some social life. But let's ignore the rest of the world here. Let's get these 90 days done. And then let's see what happened, because ultimately the only real way to grow anything, right? You've got this show, right? Growing a YouTube channel. The only way to grow anything is to regularly put out content, right? Because especially something like Google, right? Google is this massive.
Pick that up, yeah.
It's like this Google's just looking for massive amounts of data, right? Google wants data and words and numbers and repetition and, regular consistent posting, because Google doesn't want to put, if you search for, if you search for, how to produce a podcast, right? Google doesn't want to show a result from like 1998, right? I think, things have changed since then. So Google wants to know, like, okay, who's putting out fresh content, who's putting out good content, and that requires just this massive amount of just data to send Google, right? You can think of it like feeding the machine.
Yeah.
And so what was really interesting, and I mean, this is only the first 90 days, really, right? Which is it's still just the beginning. In fact, in a lot of ways, you could argue like still haven't even really gotten off the starting block. Like this is still just like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
It's going to keep going and growing from here.
This is
But
the like 100-meter dash within that 400-meter kind of
within like the marathon,
the marathon,
within the Ironman, with
yeah. Right.
And so what I did, right, every day was just consistently putting out new content. Half the time I had no idea what to write about, so I was just like, just write something, right? Again, it was I was less concerned about quality, and I was more concerned about quantity and consistency.
Yeah. And is this all like posted like right away, or is this written and then you choose what you're posting here and there, or like, is this like how does that work?
Do you want the raw, honest truth?
I'd love the raw, honest truth. Yeah.
That's what we're all about on the show, right?
Right.
So quite truthfully, I never, what's the word? Like I never reviewed, I never proofread, I never sent any articles to anybody to like read or check over. So it's a little bit better now, but the first articles that I put up, they were filled with like grammar mistakes and spelling mistakes and formatting errors. Like they were garbage, right? but it was a philosophical decision, right? The decision that I made is what's important is getting content on the website, right? The like, if you're writing an article and you know that like maybe 3 people are going to read it, right? That article doesn't really deserve, 40 hours of work to make it perfect. It's like, that's 2 hours, get it done, get it written, get it put out there. Again, give Google that, some information, that little poke to say, hey, Google, still here, still producing content. And then as the website grows and develops and you start to see, okay, now I actually have a readership. Now I actually have, 10, 100, couple thousand people, a day, a month, whatever, actually coming, checking this out. Then it's like, okay, now I can justify the time it's actually going to take to improve the quality, because I know people are actually here watching it.
Yeah.
But until we hit that critical mass, it's like, I don't care about quality. I don't care. It's just, it's purely a waste of time. And I think that's what, and again, I think this will apply a lot to your audience and, aspiring musicians and people who want to start their, social media career, or however you want to put it. They get so hung up on quality and is this perfect, that it actually freezes them and stops them from starting, when it's like, no,
stalls that process. Yeah.
You got to start. You got to put in your reps. You got to put in your repetitions here. It's like going to the gym, right?
Yeah.
You don't just go to the gym once and you're Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's like, no, you keep going back again and again and again. This is going to take some time. And so you just have to start putting in those reps. And so this 90-day challenge was putting in those reps. And last kind of point that I want to make here is so I for full credit here, I got the idea from this guy named Miles Beckler. He's an entrepreneur. He's got a great YouTube channel. And he really promotes this idea of the 90-day challenge. And his whole thing is like, okay, it's not about the content that you put out, right? That doesn't really matter. What matters here is the mindset shift. What matters here is at the end of the 90 days, you're not just some guy with a blog anymore. You are now a publisher.
You've already gotten into that mindset that you're going to keep doing that kind of thing.
Well, it's like you actually become a different person. It's like it's like I am a publisher now, right? And publishing content is it's part of what I do, right? In the same way that I breathe air and I eat food, right? Publishing content is now it's just something that I do on a daily basis. And so that was the whole point that he was trying to make here, is the reason to do this focused 90 days is so that when you come out the other side, you are actually a different person. You actually have a different mindset, a different mentality. And it's like, that is, they say like it takes 21 days to build a habit, right? It's that kind of thing where it's like after 90 days, it's like you are now a different person.
Yeah. Yeah, you're now creating a habitual, you know, routine that you're going to
Yeah,
like continue
routine.
to do because you're already, used to getting up at that time. Or
Do you think do you think your audience would be interested in a little screenshot of kind of behind the scenes what's been going on?
totally, totally. Share away. I'm sure the viewers would want to see what's
Because I
going
think
on.
I think sometimes having some, having some numbers, having some figures helps to make it real.
Yeah,
So
totally.
you can see this now.
Oh yeah.
Boom. All right. So this is my Google Search Console, which for those that don't know is basically this is my my headquarters, my command center. It's my way of communicating with Google and understanding, like when you do a Google search and all of those listings come up, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the way of understanding how well you're ranking in Google, right? And specifically we'll focus on here clicks. So these are people, somebody did a Google search and they clicked on the listing.
Yeah.
Impressions is, if you do a search and there's 10 search results on the page, all of those search results, they got an impression, but then only the one that got clicked on gets a click.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
that's
So
that distinction.
if it shows up, then it's an impression. But if they've clicked on it, then it's
Exactly.
a click.
So ultimately clicks are more useful, more valuable because it means that somebody actually came to your website.
Mm-hmm.
But an impression can be a good indicator that like, okay, I'm ranking for this keyword.
Yeah.
Now what can I do to, do a little better? Right?
Okay.
So now, so this graph we goes all the way back to March 2020 here. So it goes back a little ways.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, I started my website. I think I launched my website like 2018 or something, but I
Okay.
basically didn't do anything with it. I set it up and then it just kind of sat there.
Yeah.
Right. And for a little context here, so this was April 2020, so about a year ago. I was this is actually when I got the first idea for a 90-day challenge, except I fell completely on my face. I think I wrote about 10 blogs.
Okay.
Right. So I put out about 10 blogs here in April. And as you can see, nothing really happened. Started getting a few clicks, a few impressions. But then April, and then finally we get to December here, and suddenly there's a big spike in impressions, right? Suddenly it's like, phew. And the first thing I just want to mention here for anybody who's interested in starting a blog, it's something to be aware of is that it takes Google the better part of 6, 8, 12 months to really index your content, right? There will be an initial spike. There is an initial spike when you put up a post, but it takes that full 8 months for Google to fully be like, okay, we see your content here, right? And so just showing like, okay, there's that 8-month delay. But then again, I stopped posting, right? Stopped posting. So as you can see, even from there, kind of, it started going down a little bit. And I don't know what these spikes up and down are. It's kind of weird. But as you can see, the website's basically dead. Not much is going on. Okay. Fast forward now to where things get interesting. It's now the beginning of April, and this is where I start my 90-day challenge. And you can see right away, my impressions are like, start going up, right? Because Google's like, he's back.
Oh, you got more content. Yeah.
He's back. Let's start featuring this, right? So impressions start going up immediately. With clicks, however, there's a bit of a lag. There's a bit of a delay. Nothing too much happens for the first while. But if you look at it from May onward, May, June, it's been this exponential growth curve up, right? And what I ran the math, and every month it's been going up about 4x every month, right? So like, let's say in March, say in March, I had about 4 clicks to my website.
Yeah.
Right. Then in April, when I started putting out content, I had about 16 clicks to my website. Right. So it's up 4x, right? Not bad. And then in May, it went up about 4x from that up to about 64 clicks or so in May. And then June up 4x again. I'm doing some quick math here, but it was about, I think actually in June, it was 280 clicks. Right.
Amazing.
And so I understand that in the big picture, those are still small numbers. But if you go up 4x every month, from say 250 clicks, you know, if next month I go up 4x again, that's now 1,000 clicks. If the next month I go up 4x again, that's 4,000 clicks,
Yeah.
right? 4x again, that's 16,000 clicks. So now by like September, October, now I've got a huge website. If we can keep this momentum going. But that's the main thing I wanted to highlight here is it's in the beginning, it's slow, it's painful. You're writing content, you're putting out all this content, and it's frustrating because you're like, nobody's seeing this, nobody's reading this, Google isn't indexing this, I'm not getting any clicks. What's the point, right? Like, it's so demoralizing. But you need to have that attitude of like, the metaphor is like going through the valley of death. Right?
Yeah.
It's like you got to get through the valley of death, but then on the other side is like this beautiful oasis.
There
right?
You see the pastures and all the rest. Yeah.
Right. But it's like you have to keep going, and so that's that's the exciting thing I want to share with everybody here, is just showing that like if you put in the work and you keep grinding, it does eventually start to take off. It does eventually start to see that exponential growth. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say I've gone viral. That's probably an overstatement. But it's taking off in a consistent pattern. So all I have to do now is just maintain the momentum.
That is super cool.
All right, I feel like I just had a huge rant, so I'm gonna go quiet for a little bit and let you get back to your questions.
No, I was just like that's super cool. And I think it's like just one of like the main points, I guess, that you were trying to make, that I kind of understood, is that like it's best just to kind of like move on, like keep moving forward, and keep like, even though you like, it's almost like the success in it is the starting and the being in it and being
enjoying the process
and enjoying that process. Like,
I mean, one of my big mentors to kind of get through this was Gary V, right? So like I've got his book up here, Jab 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 Right Hook, right?
Yeah.
And he talks about in 2004 he was one of the very first people to actually start a YouTube channel, right? He started Wine Library TV. And he talks about how like for the first 18 months of, I think he put out 5 episodes a week. For the first 18 months, nobody watched it, right? Like it was nothing. Yeah. Nobody cared, right? But he did it 5 days a week and just kept going and just kept going and just kept going. And then after 18 months, then things really started to take off. And, from there he got huge and famous and all of that. But it's just kind of the, it's difficult because it's so easy to get shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
And I've been so guilty of this much of my life, right?
Yeah.
And there's always new platforms, and there's like, oh, there's Snapchat, oh, there's TikTok, and oh, there's Instagram.
Try this now. Yeah.
Now there's Instagram Reels, and there's Vine, and like it's so easy to like be all over the place, especially when you're like a solopreneur, right? You're a musician and you're just doing your own thing. You don't have like a whole agency behind you to like push out content for you,
to be
right?
Like you need,
It's important. Like what I've finally done here is I made the decision, okay, I'm going to start a blog. I'm going to work on the blog. All I'm going to care about is the blog. And just every day I'm going to put out content for the blog. Right.
What about those days where like you just like are like, I can't write, or you know what I mean? Or you feel like I got nothing.
Nonsense.
Yeah. Like
nonsense.
Do you just write that, or you just write through it, or?
So again, this is a great question, because I feel like it's one of those, especially for people that are more in like, creative, artistic spaces, right? And you feel like you need to be, inspired to like, or, I got to be inspired to like write my song, to write my album, right? And, I get that. I appreciate that. If I was going to recommend one book to everybody to like read right now, it's The War of Art. By Stephen Pressfield. And he's the guy, do you know the movie The Legend of Bagger Vance?
Okay, yeah.
He's the guy that wrote the screenplay for that. Right?
Good movie, yeah.
I haven't actually seen the movie. I should check it out.
No, it's a great one, yeah.
But the whole premise of this book, because this book is basically written, it's written, aimed towards creatives. Like the whole thing is written for like, if you're a writer, whatever, writer, musician, actor, like whatever your thing is, if you work in a creative space, but even non-creative spaces, his whole thing is, I mean, he talks about getting over resistance, right? That resistance, like sit down and do the work, but he puts a very, you could almost say mechanical lens on it.
Okay.
Right. Because the traditional view is like, well, I can't write something unless I'm inspired.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
I need that spark of inspiration before I can, blah, 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 do my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And his whole argument is like, no, that's BS. What you need to do is dedicate a block of time every day, probably need a good solid 4 hours every day. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could say like 8 a.m. to 12, whatever works for you, but dedicate a block of time. And it's like, that's just your time. Right.
Yeah.
And you get in and you sit down and you just write. Right.
Yeah.
And you don't, because we get hung up again, going back to this, argument about quality, right? We're always so concerned about quality and perfectionism. Right. And his whole argument is like, just start writing, right? It doesn't matter if it's bad. It doesn't matter if it's garbage. Just write, just produce, just do a thing. And so that's been my approach. And so what I've actually done is I've blocked off, in my calendar, from 6:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. Right. That's my block of time. And so what I do is I start with like I've got a whole book collection, right? So I'll take some time. The first hour, say, I'll read through a book. And as I'm reading through that book, that will usually give me some sparks of inspiration to be like, okay, I could talk about this. I could talk about this. I like what he said in that paragraph, right? So I use the reading to kind of be a bit of a springboard in terms of like, all right, let's get the juices flowing. Let's get some ideas going here, kind of scribble down some ideas. And then, roughly for the, hour and a half, 2 hours, then I'm like, all right, now it's time to write a blog. And my only goal is to make sure that I get, 1,500 words, written and done. And again, I'm not concerned about like, is this great quality? Is this the best? Is this perfectly researched? Is it spell checked? Is it formatted? Like, I don't care about that. All I care about is like, just get the 1,500 words on the page, and then take those words and you upload them and you publish them. And it's just kind of becoming a bit of a publishing machine. Now, I'm sure some people might look at that and say like, oh, that's too mechanical, or like, I'm sure you could make the argument that it suffers from quality, like, good quality work. It needs more time. It needs to be polished. It needs to be more well researched. Part of how I look at it, at least in terms of my process, is in my mind, the blog for me is kind of like the blog is the rough draft, right? Yeah. The blog is the rough draft. Likely what I'll do at some point in the future is I'll start going through it and I'll figure out, okay, this was good. I like that. That was bad. That was crap. Get rid of that. I'll figure out what was good and what was bad. I'll take the good stuff and I might compile that then into an actual book or something, or, something more packaged and formal, or whatever that might be.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But people get so hung up on trying to be perfect the first time that they then don't actually produce. And you have to, and maybe I'm just a better editor than I am a writer, but I like to have something in front of me that I can kind of like edit and change and fix and improve.
Yeah.
Right. But if I don't have anything in front of me, it's like, I don't have anything to critique. So it's like, just got to get something out. So that's been my method to like get over, procrastination, resistance, whatever you want to call it, is just setting a time, being like, all right, that's the reading time, that's the writing time. And then I don't care if you want to do it or not. You're just gonna sit down and you're just gonna do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like not getting hung up on what the outcome is going to be. And it's just about kind of being free with yourself to let that info out and just kind of like, you know what I mean? Or even if you're stuck for info, just kind of like be like, or write, I'm feeling stuck and I'm, you know what I mean? Or this kind of stuff. And, I feel like that kind of momentum almost, you know what I mean? By creating that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Momentum's a key word here. The other thing he talks about in this book is the idea of turning pro, right? Of being, if you want to be a writer, be a professional writer. And
Mhm.
the analogy he uses is like, as much as, as much as everybody, complains about their job, right? People still show up to their jobs, right?
Yeah.
If the boss says be in the office at 9 o'clock, you show up at the office and you're there at 9 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
And if you have to be there until 5, right, you put in your time, you show up at 9, you stay till 5, or whatever the hours are. But it's like, you show up because that's your job. And if you didn't show up, you'd be fired from your job, right?
Mhm.
And he's saying, yeah, take that mentality and just apply it to your creative work,
Yeah, for
right?
your own self. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, if you want to be a professional writer or a professional musician, treat it like a professional job.
Yeah, like, oh, I gotta start work. I gotta, at least get something on paper and that kind of stuff. And yeah. Um, this year, I know it's been like super like challenging for tons of people and stuff like that. Do you feel that this year has kind of led to your creativity and made you helped you be more creative, or has it kind of like, you know,
It's
made it more difficult to be creative?
it's a really interesting question. And obviously I don't in no way would I say the pandemic is like a good thing, right? That doesn't make any sense. But in a weird way, timing wise, for me, it's actually worked out quite well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because the process of starting a blog, or most creative endeavors, for the most part, is it's a solo pursuit,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I guess it might be different, like if you're in a band and you need to all get together to coordinate and collaborate.
Mm-hmm.
But at least for me, in terms of writing a blog, it's a very solo activity.
Mm-hmm.
And so by having these lockdowns and
You've
not supposed to be social, right? It gives me a great excuse to not be overly social, because I'm like,
Yeah.
can't hang out, guys, pandemic, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like, I need that isolation to myself to be like, no, this, again, turning pro, right?
Yeah.
I need that time, right? I have to put in the work. I have to put in the reps. I have to write the articles. I can't, I can't hang out. I can't go to the party. I can't go to the cottage, right?
Yeah.
There's also an element of sacrifice here,
Yeah.
right? People look at famous people and they're like, oh man, like, must be so great to be that famous person, right? But they don't see the flip side of the coin, where it's like, okay, but what were all the things that they had to sacrifice to get to that point, right? It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you can't go to the college to the cottage, right? You can't just grab beers with your buddies and watch the UFC match while you're eating wings at the pubs, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's things like that you need to let go.
Yeah.
It takes a shocking amount of work to actually, it's a baby, right? It's a baby, and you have to grow and you have to
Yeah.
nurture it, and it takes a lot of work.
Like, it becomes a bit of self focus and self driven kind of, motivation kind of thing.
Exactly.
Like,
So at
yeah.
least for me, that's been the silver lining of this pandemic, is it's
Mhm.
given me a very convenient excuse to be a little bit more isolated and just focus here on my craft.
Nice. Yeah. I have heard this from some people, that because of the timing of everything and how the pandemic really kind of slowed everything down. So I feel like that kind of like, helped in a lot of ways, because we were able to focus on these kind of like self-driven or you know, self-focused kind of
Initiatives.
initiatives. Yeah, totally. I guess the one of the last kind of questions I'm gonna ask is, and it's also kind of a big one, is what's mindfulness to you? Like, how would you kind of feel what mindfulness, or like how do you get yourself into a mindful state, or like that kind of thing?
This is another big and loaded question. No,
I
they're
got
good.
I got a bunch.
They're good questions here.
Thanks.
Um, yeah, mindfulness is an interesting one. Um, and I feel like I want to navigate this one a little bit carefully, because I mean, I guess, as you read up from my intro, I've lived a somewhat interesting life in terms of I've kind of lived on both sides of the coin, if you will, right? So
Mm-hmm.
on one hand, I was an engineer and very, in that,
Very structured and
yeah, very
yeah.
structured, very like, A-type personality, and, very, you know, just like everything has to be like normal and organized and like fit in its box, right?
Yeah.
And then there's another part of me that's also taken some time where like, I don't have it anymore, but I'm sure you saw a while back. Like
The long
I had
hair.
like really long hair, and I went traveling, and I was kind of more in like a bit of a like hippie phase in my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've kind of seen like both sides of those worlds, right? Like, one part of the world is like, yes, capitalism is great, and then another part is like,
Yeah.
capitalism is the worst and it's destroying everything,
Well, yeah,
right?
in the intro I mentioned those 5-10 day silent meditation retreats,
Yeah.
the Vipassana meditation retreats as well, which is like, you know what I mean? Like if you think about like this, engineering or structured life, I think it's a very kind of juxtaposed
Oh, for
view
sure.
of that, right? Like,
I think for me, like, mindfulness takes on a bit more. It's just a little bit more, just a little bit more chilled out, right?
hmm,
And so for me, mindfulness is more just about, being in tune with like, what is it that I want to do, right? Um,
yeah,
so it could be in terms of like, I guess I want to say in terms of like figuring out what's important for you,
hmm.
right? And so mindfulness for me meant in terms of like being in tune with that level of self-awareness.
Mm-hmm. Like taking some time to like kind of self-actualize what your process is going to be,
Yeah, and
kind of thing.
figure out who I am, and what I want to do,
Yeah.
right? And then I guess in my,
And I
you
guess
know,
the important part is like that time, like allowing yourself that time to kind of go through that process.
for sure. And when you've got 10 days of silent meditation, it definitely gives you some of that
You
time.
have time. Yeah.
We can return to that in a little bit. I think we kind of
Yeah.
skipped over it. But what I was going to say is I feel like for me now, mindfulness, I want to equate to like being observant,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think the simplest way I can describe it is like what I was talking about before, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I get up in the morning, my routine is I take some time to read a book, right? And what I'm doing is I'm looking through that
Creating.
book
Yeah.
to find like, those little sparks of inspiration, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I see mindfulness in terms of like awareness, right? And so like I'm being mindful of like, okay, here's what I'm reading. Okay, this
Mm-hmm.
idea looks interesting. That idea looks interesting. Okay, I could expand on that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
let's take that. We'll put that in another document. Okay, we can grow this. We can expand it. We can research more about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just being mindful of like, okay, I'm not just reading for mindless entertainment here. I'm reading because I want to turn this into something even bigger.
I want to bring, yeah,
Did you
spot
want to
to
did you want to touch back quickly on Vipassana before we end? Or
let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. Let's chat. We
so
got time.
so real quick. So for those that don't know, Vipassana meditation, they're these 10-day silent meditation retreats. They have centers all over the world. There's one if you're in Toronto. There's a center up near Barrie. But centers literally all over the world, and so that's part of what I was doing is I was traveling around the world, and visiting these different centers. Partly because, so first of all, they're free, right? So they're all run by donation. So afterwards, if you enjoyed your experience, you can donate some money, but it's
Mm,
free to show up. They give you a bed, they give you food. So if you're an unemployed traveler, like 10 days of like
that's yeah.
10 days of free accommodation and free food, I'm like, sign me up for it. I'm in.
Right.
Now it's
It's
not, again, it's not playtime. You do need to actually, it is a very intense experience, and it's probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
But
Well, I
basically,
think like just being silent for that long, you have to really get into yourself, I imagine, you know.
oh yeah. So you're silent for 10 days, basically meditating for about 10 hours a day for 10
Mm-hmm.
days. So it's a super intense experience. A few key takeaways. So first of all, I mean, this is a bit of a generalization, but I would recommend for anybody who likes a challenge, I would recommend you try it at least once in your life. Just like go and see what happens.
Yeah.
Having said that, though, I've decided that if ever I was going to do another one,
Mm-hmm.
I probably wouldn't actually do it through center, and I would do it on my own, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Either at my apartment here, or get like a cabin in the woods, to be a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
isolated, or even go camping or something in Algonquin Park.
Yeah.
Um, but I would probably do it on my own, just because, again, remember what I was saying before about like I don't like other people like telling me how to run my life and my schedule and all
Totally.
this.
Yeah.
It is a pretty austere experience, right? And they have, they're pretty strict. There's a lot of rules.
Mm-hmm.
So like one time I got in trouble because it was, I don't know, it was the afternoon. We were on break, and we were allowed to like go outside and walk around and stuff. And it
Right.
was a nice, beautiful day, and it was sunny. And so like I took my shirt off to get some sun, right? And so I got told off for like not having my shirt on, right?
Oh wow.
So like it's not a
Huh.
it's not a place to like go and get your suntan on, right? So like
Right.
little things like that, where it's just like, I mean, I could see myself having quiet meditation for 10 days. It's cool in my mind if I get a little sun as well, right?
Yeah. I think
Or
at this point now you've gone through that process, so you're able to navigate what that process means and
exactly,
what that is
which
for
is why I'd
yourself.
probably recommend everybody should try it at least once.
Yeah.
But then other things too, like you're not supposed to exercise for 10 days, right? So this
Oh
part of me, it's
wow.
like, well,
Huh.
maybe I want to do a few push-ups, right? You're telling me I
Yeah.
can't do a few push-ups,
What if I
right?
want
So
to
like,
do some jumping jacks?
exactly, right. So there was some of the nuance that I was like, okay, I probably don't need all of these. So like there's
Yeah.
certain elements that sure I really love and are great. The biggest thing for me is just like not having a phone and not having an internet connection for 10 days. Because
Mm-hmm.
what we don't realize is like how much attention like our phones suck out
Oh
of
yeah.
us, and like
Oh yeah.
refreshing our news feed, and like
Mm-hmm.
friends messaging us. And I'm sure you've gotten frustrated by now with my my slow responses to your messages. But part of that's just because like I make the decision of like I'll either have my phone on airplane mode, or I'll just be like, all right,
Yeah.
for the next day I'm not answering my phone, because like, all right, I gotta focus,
I
I'm in the
got
zone
yeah.
here, right? And so
Totally.
when you have 10 days of like no phone, no internet connection, that like constant like distraction of like, oh, I gotta check my newsfeed, oh, I gotta see what people are up to, right? That constant distraction
Mm-hmm.
really prevents you from actually getting deep into your creativity, right? Because it's like once
Yeah.
you get lower into your mind, like once you get more to like the subconscious level, it's like that, that's where the good stuff is. That's where the juicy stuff is, right?
Yeah.
But we keep filling our brain with like all these distractions, and like, oh, I got to check my email, and I got to do this, and I got to get
Yeah.
that back to that person.
Yeah.
And so eliminating all that helps you to get much deeper into your mind, and helps you to get much more, a more creative level of expression.
Mm-hmm.
And so a few specific tangible things that I found. So first of all, I started having extremely vivid dreams when I was there. Like just like extremely vivid. Like I don't normally remember my dreams when I wake up.
Mm-hmm.
Um and but these were just like crazy vivid, just like intense dreams. And I'd wake up and just be like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or just like normally I need 8 or 9 hours of sleep. And this was like, so that's the other thing about this. If you think I wake up early, the Vipassana wake up is 4 a.m., right? So
Okay.
everybody up at 4 a.m.
Wow.
But I was finding like I was cool, 6 hours of sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so part of what it is like when you're not, because in our day-to-day lives, like we're so stressed, we're so in our heads, we're so on our phone, we're busy at work, like there's so much going on, so just like mental congestion, that when we sleep at night, our brain is like trying to get caught up on all that.
Yeah.
But when you meditate all day, your brain is able to like
Go
deal with,
into,
it's able to deal with a lot of that garbage while you're meditating, right? And so I think that's why I found that I suddenly started having all these vivid dreams, because it's like my brain was almost getting bored at night, because it's like, all right, well, we've dealt with all the trash,
Yeah.
right? So let's have some
Now we
fun.
can
Like
be creative.
let's play a movie in here, right? Like let's it's party time. And so it is really shocking kind of what happens to your brain when you start to give it that freedom. And so there's a part of me that would love to at some point in the future, like, get a cabin in the woods for like, 3 months over the summer, and be like,
allow
no internet
yourself that,
connection, no phone. I might have my laptop so I could like type on my laptop. But like no Instagram feed, none of that. And just having that 3 months where like my brain is just free to be like, okay, I can read books, I can get inspired, I can write, I can create thing, right? And so this is what I was saying before, like you have to start getting really good at saying no. You have to start having to get so good at being like, no, thank you, appreciate the invite, can't do it, I have to focus on this thing. Right. And you have to guard it.
No, it's true, it's I super appreciate you hanging out and sharing all of this.
Yeah, man, thanks for inviting me.
I appreciate this.
Thank you for tuning in to Mindful Minutes with Musicians. For more information about my guest and the topics of the show, go to blackmoremedia.ca and connect with us on all social media platforms. Welcome to the MMWM family, where we aspire to inspire. See you soon.
Amazing. Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing all this stories and chatting and all that fun stuff.
It's good. I feel like there's been a lot going on.
For sure.